Hey everybody, it's Shelby from Stang Books, and today I am bringing you my Top 5 Wednesday. This will be my first Top 5 Wednesday, and if you have no idea what I'm talking about, I will link the Goodreads group down below. It's a different topic every week, and you do your top 5. So if you want to take a look at what the topics have been in past weeks, go ahead and check that out. But the topic this week was your top 5 books that got you into a genre. You can pick multiple genres. So I actually have 3 genres I want to do today, and I'll give you my top 5s from those genres. I did try and make my picks like really books that were, to me, a good representation of the genre and brought you into it. And they're not necessarily my favorite book in the genre because a lot of times it's a series book and it may not be my favorite book in the series, but it's the start of the series, and I'm sorry, that is the reason I got into the series is because of the first book. So, anyway, so I'm going to do 3 different genres today. My first will be romance. I actually have another like top 5. I did pick different books in this that I did for the Diversathon as part of one of my Diversathon videos in trying to encourage people to read more books. I will link that video down below, which has the other top 5 I kind of picked in it, as well as leave a couple of list links for 2 Goodreads lists that are great introductory books to the genre. I like doing this just because I feel like it's a really underread genre. I know a lot of people hesitate because is too male romance, but there are just some really, really beautiful stories within the genre, and I just really love to support it. My second genre this week is going to be fantasy, which is a huge love of mine. It really the first genre that I ever really read. I got introduced to it as a child and have loved it ever since, and just read a ton of fantasy. And my third is kind of a mixing of the two in that it'll be paranormal romance, and some of my top 5 books in paranormal romance. So let's start with my top 5 romance books to get you into reading romance. I'm going to do a top pick in 5 different subsections of romance, so you get kind of a broad scope of the genre as a whole. So my first pick is kind of an action adventure category, and that is The Morning Star by M. Chandler. This is really high on the adventure and action and less on the romance side of things, but it is a romance between a top cat burglar thief and a brilliant FBI agent, really on 2 opposite sides of the spectrum, but they're find the attraction between them and find that they're closer than they think. And it's really witty. There's a lot of really great snarky dialogue. They're super funny. I really enjoyed this series. My second genre will be paranormal, because obviously if I'm doing a whole paranormal romance section later, I kind of like the genre. And my pick for this in the section is Unacceptable Risk by K.J. Charles. I adore K.J. Charles as a writer. She's brilliant. She's written a lot of really fantastic books across the spectrum, and this particular paranormal series of hers is a werewolf series, but it's really based in kind of a small town. Werewolves aren't known by everyone, they exist, and the dynamics within the pack and with humans and in those werewolf society, having a male mate was not believed to be possible. So it's just a really great introduction to paranormal romance within the spectrum. My third category I'm going to say is sports, and there's this really beautiful book, Him, by Elle Kennedy and Serena Bowen. They co-wrote it together, and it is a hockey background. It is a new adult book. The 2 boys in this book actually met at hockey camp when they were younger. They were best friends all through hockey camp until something happened in the last year of their hockey camp, and a line was crossed, and they haven't spoken since. Well, they meet back up again at the National Championship Finals for NCAA hockey, and they are reunited and then see each other again at the same camp, but this time as coaches. It's a really, really beautiful love story between these 2 boys as they are struggling to find their own identity, to be finally on their own, and deals with a lot of that new adult genre issues and topics, while also adding in what it means to be gay and discovering whether you are truly gay, bisexual, what are your feelings on the matter. So it really was a beautiful, beautifully written story. My contemporary pick is Heidi Cullinan's Love Lessons. It's the first book in her Love Lessons series. I would say that this book is a milder sex content than is usual for Heidi Cullinan. Her books are usually very erotic, have more of an erotica leaning, but she did tone it down for her NA series, though I would still say for an NA book there is a fair amount of sex in this book. But it's the story of Kelly Davidson. He is a freshman, just headed off to college and so excited to finally be going to college and being able to come out. He came from a very small town and has not been out of the closet. And there he gets paired as a roommate with Walter Lucas. Now, Walter is an older student, and he's a bit of a Casanova. He is openly gay, proud of it. He does not believe in true love. Meeting Kelly disrupts Walter's world a fair bit. So it's a really beautiful story between these two guys as they get to know each other and help each other really take a new step forward in their lives. And my last pick in the genre is Widdershins by Jordan L. Hawk. This book is kind of a cross-purposes book because it's both paranormal and historical, but the historical elements in this are absolutely brilliant. It's so well placed in time. It's set in the late 1890s. And Percival Endicott Wyborn and Griffin Flaherty are two dynamic duos. Griffin was a Pinkerton detective, which was the precursors to the FBI, but he's moved to Percival's hometown and set up a PI company. Percival, on the other hand, he is a language scholar. He does research into ancient languages and translations for the museum. There is something mystical and paranormal stalking their town, and together Percival and Griffin are out to stop it. It's a really wonderful mystery and paranormal, but the historical elements are so well written, and dealing with any sort of historical and romance is always interesting because at the time being gay was a punishable offense. It's not even that long ago that it became no longer a crime in many areas. So I really like the way the author handles the historical elements within the story, and it was a great mystery with wonderful paranormal elements, and Wyborn and Griffin are just fantastic. They're two of my favorite couples. I just really enjoy them together. Moving on to my fantasy picks. So most of these are books that I started reading when I was really young. I was first introduced to this genre by my mother when I was like 6, 7 years old, and I devoured so many fantasy novelists, and they still to this day remain some of my favorites. So my first pick for my fantasy is the author that got me into reading fantasy in the first place, and that is Anne McCaffrey. This is her book Dragonflight. It is one of the most popular books within this series of her Dragon Riders of Pern series, and Dragonflight tells the story of Lessa. She is the heir to the Ruatha Hold, but no one knows she's still alive. Her hold was overtaken by a conqueror, and he basically wiped out her whole family. Well, in this world, the dragon chooses their rider. Well, there is one where dragons live left in the world, and there's only one queen left alive, and she is dying, and she has in her last clutch laid a queen gold egg. And so all of the dragon riders are out searching for any candidates that they can bring back. And Flair is a young wing rider in the Ware, and he is out on search. He ends up at Ruatha Hold and gets involved in some controversy going on there, and in doing so discovers Lessa. It's a really great story, really wonderful characters. I just loved this book. It hooked me from the beginning. And Anne McCaffrey really, with this series, bridges a gap between sci-fi and fantasy. So some people would qualify it as sci-fi because it has a very sci-fi base to it, but it is dragons and flying, and there's no technology in the world at this point in the series, and so it's very fantasy feeling. My next series, and as you can tell, I absolutely love this book because I have completely destroyed it over the years. I mean, it's completely lost its cover at this point. I need a new copy of this book. But this is The Sword of Shannara by Terry Brooks. This is not my favorite book in this series, but it is the first book in this series. This has a very Lord of the Rings-esque style to it. It's basically like if you took a post-apocalyptic world and then put Middle-earth on top of it, you end up in Terry Brooks' world. They actually just started a TV show on MTV, which I really hate that it's on that channel, because I think they're going to ruin it and probably have ruined it, and I still haven't watched it because I just not happy with the choice of channel. That actually starts with the second book in this series. They skipped over this book because a lot of people really compare it unfavorably to The Lord of the Rings. It definitely is an homage to that book, to those books, but this was his first book in this series, and you can tell his writing improves with each of the later books. So my favorite series in this is actually the Heritage of Shannara series, and that is the second series he wrote within the world. And this world covers many generations of the same family. I love the Heritage series, that's my favorite. But this was the book that got me hooked on that series, and so I feel it qualifies for this top 5. Because I read this and never stopped and read all of the other books. Next, I have another really well-known fantasy novelist. This is David Eddings. This is The Diamond Throne. It is the first book in his Elenium series. Most people prefer 2 of his other series, The Belgariad and the Malorian. This was my favorite series. This is very reminiscent of like the Knights of the Crusades. It's very tied with religion, but in the religion in this world, which is semi-based on kind of a Christianity-style feel. But there's magic and knights and adventure. This book starts with Sparhawk, who is a Pandian knight and Queen's champion, having been exiled from the land for 10 years. There was a falling out between him and the old king and the church. Well, now the young princess has been crowned queen, and she has, in her childish hand at the time, sent him a recall to come home. Well, what he doesn't know is the letter actually was from years before, and they've used it to get him back because she has been poisoned. All of the rest of the knights have used magic to encase her in a glass, you can kind of see it in the picture, a glass case to keep her alive while they try to find a cure. So Sparhawk comes home, finds out what's happened with Alana, who was his charge when she was younger, and sets off on the quest to try and save her. I really love the series. I love the way that religion is presented in this story. It's really an interesting use of, in a fantasy world, how the religious structure really changes things in a political manner, and the Knights are a religious organization in this. They very much are reminiscent of the Knights of the Crusade. And it just was a fascinating book, and I love the way it was structured. And it's an adventure, and it's awesome, and there are gods, and there are powers, and magic, and knights. Come on, it's knights. Next, we have Mercedes Lackey. This is her Valdemar series. This is Winds of Fate, which is the first book in one of the trilogies within the Valdemar world. It is one of the later trilogies as far as chronological time goes, but it was my favorite of the series. So Elspeth is princess in the kingdom. She is the heir to the throne. She is bonded to a companion, Gwenna, a horse essentially, but the companions are not really horses, and they are beautiful, snowy white, intelligent beings that bond with people of virtue and honor, and they have learned that there's trouble coming to the land because Valdemar is protected from magic by an outside force. No mage can cross into their kingdom. No magic can be practiced within the bounds of the kingdom, and there hasn't been a mage in Valdemar in hundreds of years. Well, that border is failing, and there's outside forces that are now preparing to attack Valdemar. And so Elspeth is sent on a quest to find a magician to come back and help them and teach them magic, those that can be taught, and try and save the kingdom. She ends up getting sent into far-off lands to people that have only been talking about in whispers, really, over the years. They're very secretive people. And she meets up with the Teledras, which is a branch of the people, and meets Darkwind. and he is a mage, and a lot of craziness ensues, and there's massive epic fantasy battles and magic and really wonderful characters, and I just loved Elspeth and Darkwind. I thought they were fantastic, and this trilogy within the world was my favorite, so that's the one I picked, even though, as a whole, the entire Valdemar world is bloody fantastic. And last, we have probably my most recent read of, actually not even my most recent read, it is my most recent read of all the books that I've talked about. I read all of the rest that I've mentioned prior to probably 15. I read them as a kid, in high school, and I've reread them many times since. But this book I actually was introduced to in college, as a college or just after college. I think maybe just after college. And it's a newer author, but I absolutely love her writing, and that is Anne Bishop. This is The Daughter of the Blood. It is the first book in her Black Jewels trilogy. I absolutely adore this series. It's very dark. Very, very, very dark. But it is brilliant, and it talks about the way that men and women interact with each other and what is a proper relationship between men and women and how it can be perverted. And there are so many different races within this world. You have humans, and then you have longer-lived races, and you have the kindred, magical creatures you could ever imagine, and 3 different realms. It's just a very intricate world where magic is based on your inborn power, and when you are born, you were gifted with a jewel. The darker the jewel, the more powerful the witch. In the world, there's only one black jeweled warlord prince left alive, and one ebon gray, the 2 strongest powers in the world. And in the start of this book, on the upper level Toriel of the 3 realms, magic has been perverted, and women have taken over control and have basically enslaved any man of power. There has been always a prophecy that someday will be born witch, who would be not just any witch, she is the witch. And she is dreams made flesh, and the hopes and dreams of everyone to come and save them and save the world. And Damon, it's actually Damon, I can't even say it. Demon spelled it's demon spelled Daemon, and we're gonna try this again. Damon, who's spelled Daemon, and his brother Lucifer. They are the only 2 left, with the black jeweled and the ebon gray. They have both been awaiting the coming of witch, and they are both from the longer lived races. They've lived for centuries, and Damon finally meets her. But when he meets her, she's 10 years old. And in this first book, she's a child. And it's very dark. A lot of really crazy things happen. But it's such a beautiful story. And it goes into crazy places that you just could not expect. And I don't want to ruin anything because it's so amazing. And I've reread it so many times. But it really is just a wonderful analysis of what men and women should be to each other and how those relationships can be twisted. Just beautiful, beautiful writing, amazing writing. Anne Bishop has quickly become one of my favorite authors of all time. Totally check it out. So, on to my paranormal romance suggestions. These are the 5 first books in series that I have loved the series. So, I picked everything that's from a series. I picked the first book in that series because it was the book that got me into the series, and I read and have since read pretty much every single book within the series. And they're ongoing series. None of these, well, one of these series is mostly done. She may still continue to write in the world, but she's finished the arcs of this series. So my first book in that series, the paranormal romance suggestions, is Kresley Cole's A Hunger Like No Other. This series is paranormal, urban fantasy leaning. You have every paranormal style creature known to man in this book. You have vampires and werewolves and valkyries and witches and just all sorts of crazy paranormal creatures. And in this book, Emmeline is a half Valkyrie, half vampire, and she meets Lachlan McGreeve, the leader of the Likey clan, who's a werewolf. And they are naturally bound to hate each other and, of course, come to romance and love and wonderfulness and all sorts of crazy shenanigans. This series does pair up really odd pairings of different couples and styles and whatnot, and I really, really love it. I like the variety within this world, that each book is a different paranormal creature, and it's not just all vampires or werewolves. On a similar note, my next pick is Pleasure Unbound by Larissa Ione, and this is in her Demonica series. It is the first book in her Demonica series. This series is about a trio of half-brothers that are demons. Only male Seminist demons are ever born, and they will always be born as Sems, but they retain some qualities and characteristics of the female that their fathers mated with. So each of the brothers has different powers and different demon qualities based on who their main father, slept with, essentially. So this book takes place in Underworld General, which is a demon hospital that the three brothers run. Eodolin is the head of the hospital. He does have powers of healing as part of his nature, and don't let that fool you. It does not mean he's a nice guy all the time. He can kick butt. Actually, he kicks a lot of butt. But anyway, the story is about Talia, and she is a demon slayer. She does not believe at the start of this book that there's such thing as any type of good demon, until she meets Eodolin, and of course the romance ensues, and there's all sorts of pretty, sexy times and funness between them. But in meeting Eodolin and finding out about Underworld General, she comes to realize that just being a demon is not reason enough to kill someone, and that there is more to demons than meets the eye. So, really fantastic book and world, and it gets more and more complicated as the series goes along. Fantastic read. So, my next pick in the similarly demon category, we have Gina Showalter's The Darkest Night, which is the first book in her Lords of the Underworld series. The premise of this book is actually steeped in Greek mythology, which I love and adore because I am a classic scholar and I have a degree in Latin and Greek. There was a group of warriors who were basically the warriors to the gods and the protectors to the gods. So there was this sacred box that housed a whole bunch of demons, and they all wanted to be in charge of guarding it, but instead it was handed to someone else to protect and guard. It was given to Pandora. See where I'm going with this? Know anything about mythology, you should be able to figure it out. Anyway, Pandora was supposed to guard this box. Well, the warriors all decided that they could guard it better, and they went and they stole the box. Well, in doing so, the box was opened, and out of Pandora's box came all of the demons and bad of the world. And so in punishment, these warriors were each bonded to a different demon. And each of them struggles in their own way with the demon inside of them. And there's all sorts of levels of myth and awesome paranormal elements that kick this series off. And I really love this series. It is an ongoing series, I think I mentioned previously, and I am, I think, a book behind right now. So we need to get back on this one. But really great series. This was the first book. It was fantastic. You should totally check it out. Next is probably the book that got me into reading paranormal romance in the first place, and that is Sherilyn Kenyon's Night Pleasures. Again, we're dealing with Greek gods. We've talked about those already once today. Night Pleasures is the first book in her Dark Hunters series, and it's actually not technically the first book. The first book, there is a prequel called Fantasy Lover, and it is tangentially related to the Dark Hunters series, but this is the first book that really kicks off the storyline that you follow. And so I don't like Fantasy Lover as much. It was okay. It was decent, but this is fantastic. This series is very Buffy-esque kind of snarky style, but in an adult manner. It's not quite as teen, young adult styling, but it has that irreverent humor. And in this world, you have Greek gods still around, still in their pantheon. Mythology of this series is that Apollo once created a race of children to rival Zeus's man, and he thought that they were a greatest race ever to be created, and doted on them. He gave them all sorts of powers, and in order to keep his blood in the race, he would every couple of generations go to the queen of the Apollites and sleep with her. In one particular case, when he'd been sleeping with the queen of the Apollites, he actually takes a mistress, and has a child with his mistress, and the Queen of the Acolytes gets pissed and has his child and mistress killed. He's lividly angry, curses all of his children to never again walk in his domain, aka the sun, and to only be able to live off of the blood of each other, fangs and vampires. And yet, on top of that, to add into it, they will all die at the same age that his mistress was killed. So on their 26th birthday, they are all doomed to die. There's one way for them to continue to live, and that is to drink the blood of a human, taking their soul. So acolytes always have a choice on their 26th birthday to either take a soul and continue to live, or to die in a violent, gruesome death. Artemis, in seeing what her brother had created, decided this was not okay, and she created the Dark Hunters, where she took warriors who have been killed unjustly and wrongly and want revenge on their perpetrators, and she offers them a deal. They can come and work for her for all eternity as a Dark Hunter, set to kill demon-turned-acolytes, or they can just die, and that's fine. But if they take her deal, she will give them the opportunity at vengeance on those that wronged them. Fast forward hundreds of years, and we are no longer in ancient Greece, and now are in modern America, and you have all of these Dark Hunters that have been created over the centuries, fighting the endless battle to take out demons and stop them from spreading in their evil plans, from taking over the world and using humans as cattle. But Dark Hunters are not allowed to have lovers and are not meant to interact with humans much, and there's only one way for their relationship to work. Really great series. I love the Greek mythology in it. I love the snark and the sarcasm and the humor, and it's amazingly awesome. And it's a hugely long series. She's nowhere near done with it. It's a lot of books. Now, luckily, they're all different characters and people, but there are a lot of books in this series. But I keep reading them because they're all fantastic and I just really love it. And last but not least, in my paranormal romance series, we are going to go with Dark Lover by J.R. Ward. This is dark and really amazing writing. This has a very urban feel to it. J.R. Ward has created a real subculture in this. Vampires that... and Dark Lover is the first book in the Black Dagger Brotherhood. The vampires in this world are a complete law unto themselves. Humans do not know they exist, and the entire series takes place in Caldwell, New York. Wrath is the king of the vampires. He is the leader of the Black Dagger Brotherhood. He is a badass motherfucker. The Black Dagger Brotherhood was created as a race of warriors to fight the vampires' enemies, the Slayers of the Omega. Now, in this world, vampires and humans have nothing to do with each other. There is no battle against the humans. They don't drink blood from the humans. In fact, it does nothing for them. So, really, humans are kind of left out in the cold in this. Wrath has been tasked at the beginning of this book with bringing the half-breed daughter of one of his best friends, who's recently been killed by the Slayers, into the world of the vampires. Beth has no idea that she is half vampire and has the possibility to be turned into a full vampire. And Wrath is not sure that he can really go through with this last wish of his best friend, but decides he must. And then he meets her, and we're talking like epic bonding, immediate like alpha male, dominant, kick buttness, which is awesome. These are sexy, these are dark, they're snarky, they're very urban, and I mean, these are alpha males. But I love this series. It's really well written. It's phenomenal. It's one of my favorite series. I've reread it multiple times, and it continues, and I keep reading all of the books in it, and it's just amazing. And it's amazing because it all takes place in one little town, like Caldwell, New York. Don't go there. There are lots of vampires hidden amongst you, and people getting killed all the time because there's a battle going on, and they're trying to keep it out of humans' visibility, but vampires and the Slayers of the Omega, death. I hope you liked my suggestions. If you have read any of these books, you like them, don't like them, disagree with me, think they're a terrible idea for that genre, please leave me some comments below. I'd love to start some discussion. about these books. And if you have any other books in the genres that you think I should check out and you think are great opportunities to get into the world, I'd love any new suggestions because these are 3 of my favorite genres. I will read them endlessly. So please let me know what you think. Thought, video, like, subscribe. Check out the links below. That is my top 5 introductory books into my favorite genres. Have a great day. Bye!